If you use Numerical Solver, that's located in the Apps menu. And so if you hit the Apps button and bring up those icons that usually show up when you turn your calculator on, and you go to the Numeric Solver. Okay, what you're able to do right here is you're able to enter any equation with just any number of unknowns. Okay, so let's say we enter our equation as we know it. Now, in order to reference your calculator, I do need to point out a couple things here real quick. Oops. Okay, what did I use? -3, 1, and then did I use, what was it, 4, 3? Thank you. All right. When you set this up, we originally thought of this as x1, y1, and x2, y2. Your calculators already have assigned y1, y2, y3, and everything, every number. It's already been assigned something. So we can't use y's when we set up general equations. So what I'm going to do, instead of using x's and y's, I'm going to use h and k. Okay? So I'm going to think of this point as h1, k1, and I'm going to think of this point as h2, k2. And just so when I enter enter these formulas into my calculator, I'm going to use those variables instead of x1 and y1. Okay, so when I enter my slope equation in the numeric solver, m is equal to the difference of the y's, which is going to be k1 minus k2, all over the difference of the x's, which is h1 over h2. So here is the equation that I'm going to enter. Okay, and I just use those. So does everybody see how to access the letters on your calculator? If you hit this white alpha key, okay, it shows up, it highlights this little A down here on the bottom of your display. And then you can hit the number key that is associated with the white letter. So M is right above the 8. Oops, I'm sorry, I can't see mine. M is right above the 5. So if you hit alpha 5, you get your M is equal to. And now we need to put all the expressions all the terms in the numerator inside of a grouping symbol. So let's go parentheses. And we can go k1 minus k2, close the parentheses. And we're going to divide that by, and we need to group all the terms from the denominator. So h1 minus h2. Okay, are there questions on what I did there? I'm just entering this equation into my calculator. Okay, once I enter this in the calculator, all I need to do is hit enter. And now what it shows me is, you guys won't have these numbers already here, okay, but it shows me empty spaces for all the variables that I've identified. So m, k1, k2, h1, h2. All I need to do to solve for the slope in the numeric solver is enter the correct values for each of these variables. So if we look right here, our m is unknown, so we'll leave that blank. Our k1 value, if we look, is what number? 3. Our k2 value is 1. Our h1 value is 4. And our h2 value is -3. Okay. There's several disadvantages to this. The first is entering the correct values in the correct slots, or the correct variables. And if you write it out like I did here, it makes it much easier to see. It might be a useful thing to write out if you're going to do this. Okay. The other disadvantage is when we go to calculate this, the numeric solver is going to give your answer in decimal form, not in rational form. So it's not going to give it as a fraction. So when we hit solve, solve is the F2 tab. Oops. Okay, you should get an answer. Okay, now if you get an error like what I got up here, okay, I want to show you what that means and how to clear it. Okay, if you get an error on here, what it means is your calculator's already assigned one of those variables some value. Okay, so you need to clear it. In order to clear that, if you hit this F6 key, clear A to Z, enter yes. And now all you need to do is go back. You've already entered all your stuff. Hit F2, enter into the equation and hit F2 again, and it will calculate that for you. Yeah, to clear it. If you get the error message, you need to clear your variable. So hit F6, which is second function, F1. It's a little blue F6 above there. And then hit yes to clear all your values. And then all you need to do is re-enter your equation. It should already be stored there. And then hit F2 to solve, and it'll calculate out your slope. So you should get 0.2857. As your slope. Okay. So once again, the disadvantages to this is when you match up your values for each variable, sometimes it's confusing. You've got to be very careful. And then the second disadvantage is the slope is given in decimal form, which if you need to write it in a different form, this isn't going to help you. Okay. The advantage is the following. Once you enter an equation, it's in there. So now if we were to go back to the main screen, so if you kind of escape out of this, or in this case, if you just hit the up arrow to get out of it. Okay. Up along the top here, you have this F5 tab that shows equations. Any equations that you've typed in there, okay, it stores for you. So if you see on mine, my last equation is slope. But if I move to the right, I also have the distance formula in here. I have distance equals rate times time in here. I have the Pythagorean theorem in here. So you can store some other equations or formulas that you might use commonly in this numeric solver. Once again, for a standardized test like the SAT, that could be very helpful to you. And remember, you cannot take the TI-89s to an ACT test. But for SATs, you can. All right, there's a